With the most recent deployment of the Marines, Mr. Secretary, what's the justification for using the military for civilian law enforcement purposes in L.A.? Why are you sending war fighters to cities to interact with civilians?
Every American citizen deserves to live in a community that's safe, and ICE agents need to be able to do their job. They're being attacked for doing their job, which is deporting illegal criminals. That should happen in any city, Minneapolis or Los Angeles. And if they're attacked, that's lawless, and President Trump believes in law and order. So he has every authority, and he has done mobilizing National Guard or active duty troops under U.S. code to protect federal agents in their job, which is exactly what we're doing, and we're proud to do it. We're proud to do it.
10 U.S.C. of the U.S. Code 12406 as a legal basis that the President used cites 3 examples and circumstances for the Guard: invasion by a foreign nation, rebellion or dangerous rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the President is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Which authority is triggered here to justify the use?
I don't know. You just read it yourself, and people can listen themselves, but it sounds like all 3 to me. If you've got millions of illegals and you don't know where they're coming from, they're waving flags from foreign countries and assaulting police officers and law enforcement officers, that's a problem.
The laws of the United States?
No, the governor of California is unable to execute the laws of the United States.
The president, you said all 3
governor of the California has failed to protect his people, along with the mayor of Los Angeles, and so President Trump has said he will protect our agents, and our Guard and Marines are proud to do it.
The law also says, Mr. Secretary, that the orders for these purposes shall be issued through governors of the states.
You and I both know that President Trump has all the authorities necessary, and thankfully he's willing to do it on behalf of the citizens of Los Angeles, on behalf of our ICE agents, and behalf of our country.
We've also pulled $1 billion for the border as well. So this just goes into the same fund, 134. What did
Congressman, what's the
134 million? I was asking Ms. McDonald.
Okay.
134 million goes on top of the billion that's been pulled for the border.
So the funding that was pulled for this year was largely in FSRM, and in this budget, we're actually looking to plus that funding back up to backfill that for our troops and for their families.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Valadeo.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, General. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for being here.
There have been photographs that have shown these troops sleeping on the floor and have not been provided fuel, food, or water by DOD. How long will this deployment last, and why were we unprepared to provide them basic necessities such as food and water?
And that's a disingenuous attack that misrepresents how much we care about our troops and what they're doing to defend ICE agents. I'm not going to take the fact that we don't care about the troops. Nobody cares more about...
Trump is back on stage, and this time he's sending soldiers into the streets under the pretext of national security. Really? Marines in the streets of Los Angeles to protect ICE agents? Because, you see, illegal immigrants are beating up police officers, waving flags. Which flag? Which video? Where is this riot? Clearly, in the eyes of the Trump administration, being an immigrant is a threat in and of itself. The president has the same scenario in mind. Stir up some fear, add a dash of xenophobia, and voila, we've consolidated the voter base. They're reading out sections like 10 U.S.C. 246, but no one mentions the Posse Comitatus Act, the law that says we shouldn't use the military for domestic affairs. Details, right? And the most ironic part? These guys talk about law and order, but they're sending the military into the state without the governor's permission. Constitution? Forget it. Federalism? Pfft. It's a state where the president thinks he's the father of the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive branch. And of course, the soldiers weren't even given food. They have no place to sleep, but they're here to protect ICE. Come on, these men were trained to fight, not to be social workers. This is purely a show of force, not against immigrants, but against all of us. The cruelty is the point.
The framers expected Congress to establish a local government for D.C., and Congress has established various forms of local government for D.C. since 1802. The Supreme Court has held that Congress may delegate to D.C. legislative authority over local D.C. matters. In 1973, Congress passed the D.C. Home Rule Act, which gave D.C. an elected chief executive and an elected legislature, the mayor and the D.C. City Council. The purpose of the Home Rule Act is to, quote, grant the inhabitants of the District of Columbia powers of local self-government and, quote, to relieve Congress of the burden of legislating upon essentially local D.C. matters, end quote. H.R. 884 contravenes the purpose of the Home Rule Act. D.C.'s Local Residents Voting Amendment Act of 2022 allows D.C. residents who are not yet U.S. citizens to vote only in local elections. Only in local elections, namely for mayor, members of the city council, the State Board of Education, attorney general, advisory neighborhood commissioner, and ballot measures. The D.C. law does not allow non-citizens to vote in federal elections, which is a crime under federal law. Regardless of your views on the merits of non-citizen voting for local elections, we have to acknowledge that D.C. is not the first, nor are they the only jurisdiction in our country to allow this. At various points throughout throughout American history, Congress in 40 states have allowed non-citizens to vote in local, state, territorial elections, including the home state of the sponsor of this bill. Congress did not prohibit non-citizens from voting in federal elections until 1996. And today, about 20 municipalities allow non-citizens to vote in local elections. I also want to address very specific concerns that we're hearing from our Republican colleagues.
Here we are again at the star stage of that wonderful American hypocrisy. People who live in D.C., pay taxes, contribute to society, but are not citizens, are up in arms because they will be able to vote in local elections. And who is in the lead role? The Republicans, of course. For years, they have been telling the people of D.C., who have been shouting no representation without taxation, but you can't vote in federal elections. Now they're panicking because a few people might be able to vote in local elections. Diplomats, spies, give me a break. It's absurd to even imagine a diplomat leaving the embassy on Election Day to rush to the polls in Adams Morgan. Seriously, is that your threat? But here's the funny thing. Republicans say only citizens should vote, yet they've been blocking D.C. residents from having representation in Congress for years. Where's the democracy? Where's the freedom? But when it comes to immigrants, especially those from Latin America, they get all defensive. Why? Because these people could cost them power. Because it's not about the law. It's about choosing who gets to benefit from this democracy. The rule is, if you pay taxes in this country, send your kids to school, contribute to society, then you should have the right to vote. Period. The fear isn't voter fraud. The fear is voter participation.